Is this the same man whose voice you recognize from the phone calls?
Yeah.
And is this the same man you saw passing out flyers with false requirements for voting?
It is. Definitely not Barry Manilow.
Thank you, Mr. White. No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you. Cross-examine, please.
Yes, Your Honor. Permission before I begin my cross-examination to offer one document into evidence.
So a little unusual, but sure. What is it?
Your Honor, this is Defense Exhibit 1. It's a copy of the election results from the 2011 mayor's election in Midlands that happened 4 years ago. Prior to the trial, another judge has already ruled that this document is admissible into evidence after opening statements at any time. Because it's already been ruled on, Your Honor, would offer it into evidence as Defense Exhibit 1.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor. That's what I believe Judge Nelmark ruled.
It's admitted.
Permission to approach counsel, the bench, and the jury in turn.
Sure.
And, Your Honor, before cross-examination begins, permission to publish plaintiffs 1, 2, and 3 to the jury?
Well, I don't know if you have enough copies for every juror. You're going to pass them around, or how do you want to do it?
Your Honor, we have one copy of each, but they can pass it around, if possible.
That's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Defense Exhibit 1. That's great.
Your Honor, Defense Exhibit 1.
Thank you.
Defense Exhibit 1.
And Your Honor, actually permission to retrieve Defense Exhibit 3, the photograph from the jury.
Sure.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. White.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. I'm going to try to keep this pretty short so you can get back home. Thanks for coming in on a Sunday evening.
Oh, thank you very much.
Mr. White, a second ago you said that this man in Plaintiff's Exhibit 3 was the man you saw handing out the flyers.
That's right.
Said that this man in Plaintiff's Exhibit 3 was the man that you saw answer that phone.
Yeah, that's the guy.
This is the guy who you think sent you the text.
Yeah.
This is the guy who you think sounds like Barry Manilow just a little bit, don't you think?
Yeah.
This man. Is he the mayor?
No, the man's a woman.
The mayor's sitting over there, right?
Yeah, that's Maxine Heisman.
You don't recognize this man as having ever worked on the Heisman campaign before?
I don't know who works on that campaign.
You've never seen this man with the mayor, have you?
No, the only time I saw him was on election day.
So for all you know, this man could have been acting completely independently, isn't that true?
I don't know. All I know is he said he was from the election commission.
Right, so it's possible, based on what you know, that this man was acting completely independently, isn't that true?
Yeah.
Commissioner Procedure.
Of course.
Let's talk about what the man was doing, Mr. White. You said that he was making some phone calls, right?
Yeah, but not when I saw him.
Right, but you said that he made a phone call to you telling you you couldn't vote if you hadn't graduated from college.
Yeah, I talked to him 3 times.
Right. And as you said on direct examination, you haven't graduated from college, have you?
No, I never did.
Did you still vote, Mr. White?
Yeah, I take my mom's words very seriously.
So even though he called you and told you you weren't eligible to vote if you hadn't graduated from college, you didn't believe that false information, did you?
No, I didn't.
That flyer that he handed you, it wasn't persuasive enough to convince you not to vote.
I figured I was already online. I might as well give it a shot.
And you said something a little misleading on direct examination about the people leaving the lines. Remember what that was, sir?
Oh, I never intended to be misleading.
Mr. White, you said you saw this man handing flyers to people in line, right?
Yeah.
And you said you saw some of them leaving, right?
Yeah, I did.
But you didn't ever see anybody leave with a flyer in hand, did you?
No, people were tossing them.
So it wasn't that people were getting handed the flyers and then walking out of line, right?
Well, not immediately. People were looking it over first.
Sure, and then they were staying in line,
At first, yeah.
and then they would leave.
Yeah.
And every single person that you saw leave the line actually gave you the reason that they were leaving, right?
But few people said they didn't like to wait.
They didn't say they were dissuaded by any sort of flyer.
No one said that.
They said they were leaving because the lines were too long, right?
A few people said that.
Mr. White, were the lines pretty long that day?
Yeah, they were longer than usual.
Okay. Now, you said on direct examination something else I found interesting, which is that you support Ms. Ginger, right?
I do.
And you said that you thought a lot of people in your district supported Ms. Ginger.
Based on what I saw,
You live in the Bellevue neighborhood, is that right?
that's right.
Do you know how many people live in the Bellevue neighborhood, sir?
I don't actually know the population.
But would it surprise you if it were around 11,000?
Could be.
Seems like a pretty big neighborhood, right?
I mean, I think it's a small neighborhood, but that's a big number.
You don't know 11,000 people who live in Bellevue, do you, Mr. White?
I wish I was that popular.
Exactly, Mr. White. So you know who your friends supported in this election, right?
Yeah,
You know who your neighbors supported in this election?
yeah.
But isn't it possible that Mayor Heisman actually had a bunch of supporters in your neighborhood too?
Of course it's possible.
Because as you said, you don't know everyone, right?
No.
You can't speak for the preferences of all 11,000 people.
Oh, no.
In fact, Mr. White, let's do a quick test. Who do you think won the election in your neighborhood in 2011?
Well, Mayor Heisman ended up being the mayor.
But in your neighborhood, sir, who do you think won the election?
Well, I thought that Mayor Heisman did win. I thought it was that Sullivan guy, but I was wrong.
You thought it was Ryan Sullivan, the mayor's challenger, right?
I thought so when I voted.
Not only that, sir, when you talked to us before the trial, what you told us was that you thought the mayor had lost your neighborhood overwhelmingly in 2011. Isn't that true?
I did think that. I voted for the Sullivan guy.
So it would surprise you to learn then in 2011 that the mayor actually won your neighborhood.
Well, she became the mayor.
But it surprised you to learn, based on what you thought about people's support in your neighborhood back then, that the mayor actually won your neighborhood.
Yeah, it did surprise me. She talked about raising taxes.
As you said, this time around, you thought that your neighborhood was overwhelmingly in support of Ms. Ginger, right?
Yeah,
But again, you agree you could be wrong.
of course.
Another thing, sir. You said, I think you gave a reason that you supported Ms. Ginger, right?
Well, a few things. I just thought she was a better candidate.
You said you worked pretty hard, right?
I tried to.
You take pride in working pretty hard.
Yeah.
You certainly don't think you take more than your fair share from society, do you?
No, and I know people say that.
But you don't think you do.
No.
If somebody were to say that you were leeching from society, Mr. White, that might offend you, wouldn't you say?
Probably.
For example, if, say, Ms. Ginger were to say that you were leeching from society and you were to hear that comment, that might disenchant you just a little bit too, Ms. Ginger, don't you think?
Oh, I can't believe she would say that. She grew up with a single mother in Bellevue.
Exactly, sir. You can't believe she would say that, right?
No.
Your opinion of Ms. Ginger is that she's not the type of person who would say that, right?
No, she wouldn't.
Your support of Ms. Ginger is contingent on your belief that she's not the type of person who would say that.
I don't know what you mean.
What I mean, sir, is that you support Ms. Ginger partially because she's not the type of person you think would say that.
I don't think she would say that.
If she did say it, sir, and you heard it, it might dissuade you from voting for her, wouldn't it have?
I would want to figure out why she said that.
Because it would insult you?
Yeah.
You don't want to vote for a candidate who insults you, do you?
No, but I certainly don't want to vote for somebody who's raising taxes.
One last thing. Regardless of your opinions about the mayor's tax policy, regardless of your political differences, you believe that she's ethical, don't you?
I do.
You believe she's honest, don't you?
I do think that.
You've never seen her in her 4 years as mayor or her 8 years on the city council do anything you consider dishonest, have you?
Well, I've never seen her. I've never met her.
Well, you've seen her on the television, haven't you?
Oh, yeah.
You've heard about her.
Yeah, of course.
You've never heard of her doing anything unethical or dishonest.
No, I haven't.
Thank you, Mr. White. Have a good night.
You too.
Redirect.
No redirect, Your Honor. I just asked that Mr. White be allowed to step down.
All right, you're excused. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right. Call your next witness, please.
Yes, Your Honor. At this time, the plaintiff calls Ms. Samantha Ziegler to the stand.
Ma'am, come forward over here and face me and raise your right hand to be sworn.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, do you swear or affirm that you will tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Have a seat. Ma'am, do us a favor and state your full name and spell your last name.
Certainly. My name is Samantha Ziegler. That's Ziegler.
Thank you, counsel.
Your Honor, just before I begin, permission to republish. No, I believe plaintiff's three is still there. Never mind, Your Honor. May I proceed?
Sure.
Ms. Ziegler, could you please introduce yourself to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury?
Hello, everyone. My name is Samantha Ziegler.
Where are you from, ma'am?
Right here in Midlands, born and raised.
What do you do for a living?
Well, I used to be an attorney for Booth, Mail and Burnett's, and I recently worked as the communications director for the Heisman campaign. After the campaign ended, I wasn't selected to be their press secretary. They decided to go a different way. So right now I'm working on getting back to my law career.
Ma'am, how did you first get involved with the mayor's campaign?
Well, during law school, I volunteered on a few local campaigns, and I realized there's something unique about helping a candidate voice what they believe in. When a spot on the mayoral campaign opened up, I jumped at the opportunity.
Ma'am, how long were you with Mayor Heisman's campaign?
About a year. I started back in March of 2014.
Ms. Ziegler, can you tell the members of the jury why you're here to testify today?
I was the communications director for the Heisman campaign. I worked for the mayor. After the allegations of fraud were brought forward, I realized that the things I'd seen inside that campaign office were things that people needed to know about. I'm here to tell everyone what I saw.
Ms. Ziegler, what did you see happen inside that campaign headquarters?
There's a few things I can't get out of my head. There was a strategy memo, and the mayor was talking about suppressing the votes in District 12 in order to win over Ginger. There was also a late night meeting about 2 weeks before the election in the campaign headquarters.
All right, well, Ms. Ziegler, we'll get to both of those things in just a moment. But first, can you tell us from your vantage point inside the campaign headquarters, what was working on the race line?
Well, at first it was great. Everyone got along real well, and I was proud of the work we were doing. There was only one real contender, and for months we were more than 20 points ahead in the polls. But as the campaign progressed, things started getting closer. It felt different. People started changing the way they were working to get the mayor elected.
How so?
As the polls got closer, Tom Lyon, our campaign manager, held a big meeting to reassess campaign strategy. It was top-level people only. It was myself, the mayor, and Tom Lyon, the campaign manager.
What happened at that meeting, Ms. Ziegler?
Right when I walked in, the mayor walked up to me and she handed me a memo. She said she'd written it with Tom Lyon, and it was our way to another term.
Would you recognize a copy of that memo if I showed it to you?
Yes, sir, I would.
Your Honor, permission to approach opposing counsel and witness in turn with plaintiff's four?
Of course.
Let the record reflect that I've placed what's been pre-marked as plaintiff's four before the witness. May I approach, Your Honor?
No, please. Thank you. Thank you.
Ms. Ziegler, I just handed you plaintiff's four. Do you recognize that document?
Yes, sir.
How do you recognize it, ma'am?
This is the memo that the mayor gave me. She said she'd written it with Tom Lyon.
Your Honor, at this time, the plaintiff offers Exhibit 4.
Any objection?
Yes, Your Honor. Objection to hearsay.
Okay, give me some detail.
Opposing counsel is offering this statement, this memo, for the truth of the matters asserted in the memo.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Sure.
801D2, Your Honor. This is an admission by a party opponent. Ms. Ziegler just told us that the mayor herself said that this memo was co-authored by herself. Insofar as that's the case, Your Honor, it's not hearsay. 801D2.
Anything else?
May I be heard, Your Honor? We have no foundation to authenticate that this memo was actually written by the mayor herself. If I may, Your Honor, if you look at the top of the memo, it says, "From Tom Lyon." The plaintiff had the opportunity to call Tom Lyon to the stand to authenticate the fact that he and perhaps Mayor Heisman wrote this memo together. They chose not to.
Counsel, I didn't understand her to say that the mayor wrote it, but the mayor handed it to her. Am I mistaken, or?
Yes, Your Honor. Ms. Ziegler's testimony was that the mayor handed her this memo and that she had worked it up with Tom Lyon, that it was their way to a new term, Your Honor. She told us that the mayor was a co-author of this strategy memo, and insofar as that's her testimony, it's 801D2.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, if the mayor handed it to her, the mayor saw it, you can use it. It's admitted.
Certainly. Permission to publish to the jury, Your Honor.
Sure.
Ms. Ziegler, what was the strategy for the campaign contained in that memo?
It had a strategy for how we could get the mayor to win over Ginger by discouraging low-income, low-education folks in District 12 from voting. It said that since they were going to vote for Ginger, the best option was to make sure.
Hearsay as to these individuals going to vote for Elizabeth Ginger.
Your Honor, may I respond?
Mm-hmm.
What you just told us is that the memorandum said this. It's already in evidence, Your Honor. I believe the counsel made a hearsay objection, but what she just told us is that the memorandum said that these people
In
were
that
going
case,
May I respond on this, Your Honor?
no, in that case, let's use the exhibit and you direct her to the lines you wanted to read into evidence, because this is the best evidence.
Certainly. Ms. Ziegler, if I could direct your attention to the second paragraph, the education paragraph. What does that paragraph tell the campaign for campaign strategy?
Certainly. It was called an education strategy. The idea was that we remind low education, low income folks.
Ma'am, the question was, what's it say?
Oh, yes, sir.
You can look to the second sentence there, ma'am, all the way to the bottom. What does that say for the members of the jury?
Let's remind LELI voters of this and the penalty for violations. $5,000 fine, 6 months in prison. It will reduce LELI turnout, even among eligible LELI voters.
Now, you said LELI several times, Ms. Ziegler. What does that term mean?
It's low education, low income.
So when this conversation about this memorandum and this strategy was taking place, did the mayor say anything?
When I tried to talk to her about it, when I tried to ask if we would seriously consider this as a campaign strategy, she told me not to worry about it. She turned to Tom Lyon, our campaign manager, and said she didn't want the suppression linked back to the campaign.
Ma'am, did the mayor ever mention that suppression strategy again?
She talked about some other sort of strategy that I wasn't included in. After the election, I went into her office to talk about the low voter turnout in District 12. I thought maybe the negative ads we released had reduced the voter turnout.
And what did she say?
She started laughing and she said, "Oh, sure, it was that strategy that worked."
And Ms. Ziegler, I want to talk about that second thing that you mentioned earlier, that late night meeting that you said the mayor was present for. When did that take place?
It was February 28th, 2015. It's before midnight, but after the cleaning crew had left, around 11:30.
Where were you?
I was sitting at my desk. There'd been a lot to do, and it was already almost midnight.
Were there other campaign staffers at the headquarters at that time?
There were a few other people, but it was mostly just myself. The front door had been locked, but while I was sitting there, I realized the back door opened and someone was coming in.
Who was there?
It was a strange man I'd never seen before. His eyes were darting all around, he was looking left and right, and he was walking real fast, but Tom Lyon popped out of the office at the end of the hall.
What did they do?
Mr. Lyon pulled the man into the office. Before they did, they looked left and looked right, and I wondered if maybe they'd seen the lamp on my desk on, because they shut all the blinds for the conference room.
Ma'am, did anyone else join the men in that meeting?
Well, yes, sir. The mayor walked in, and I was so surprised because she's never at campaign headquarters that late. She stopped in front of my desk and looked at me, but I looked down real fast and pretended to be typing so she wouldn't know I was watching.
How long were the three of them in that meeting?
More than 3 hours. I work late nights, but they never have late night strategy meetings.
So who was the first to leave?
It was that strange man again. He walked out with a real thick envelope. He flipped through it, shut it, and stuffed it in his jacket pocket and headed straight for the back door.
Ma'am, I want you to think back to when that man first walked into the campaign headquarters. Were you able to clearly see him?
Yes, sir. I got a real good look at him.
Ma'am, I believe that plaintiff's 3, a photograph, is right in front of you there. Do you see it?
Yes, sir.
The man in that photo, do you recognize him?
Yes, that's him. That's the man I saw the mayor meeting with.
Thank you, Ms. Ziegler. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Ms. Cohen?
Cross, Your Honor.
Yes.
Hi.
Good evening, Ms. Ziegler. You volunteered to testify today, isn't that true?
Yes, ma'am. After the election commission came forward and told me they were going to sue.
Right, so you weren't subpoenaed by the plaintiff or anything like that.
No, sir, I wasn't. No, ma'am, I was not.
You made the decision to give up your Sunday evening, come be with us in court today, is that true?
That's correct, ma'am. I believe that people need to hear about what had happened.
Well, I want to get to why you might have made that decision later. But first I have some questions about what you actually did on the mayor's campaign, okay?
Absolutely.
You were the communications director, is that right?
That's correct.
So that means you were in charge of all information that was disseminated to the public during the time that you were working on the campaign.
Not everything. I focus specifically on our messaging, television, radio.
Okay, so your main job is to work on messaging to the public, right?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
You were working on the mayor's campaign for a year.
Yes.
At no point in that year were you instructed to make phone calls to residents in Bellevue, giving them misinformation, right?
No, ma'am, like I said, I did TV and radio for the mayor.
So at no point were you instructed to make phone calls.
No, ma'am, I was not.
At no point were you instructed to send text messages to residents in Bellevue disseminating misinformation.
I was never asked to send text messages.
And at no point were you instructed to make a flyer that had a false voting law on it. Is that true?
That's correct.
All right. Ms. Ziegler, the truth is, you're a little bit bitter about how your time working for Mayor Heisman turned out. Isn't that true?
No, ma'am, I'm sorry, that's not correct.
Well, you were fired from her campaign.
No, I was not fired.
It's your testimony in court today that you were not let go from Mayor Heisman's campaign?
When the campaign ended, I was not hired on, but at no point was I fired from my position as communications director.
Ms. Ziegler, you were expecting to be kept on after the campaign. Isn't that true?
That's correct.
You thought Mayor Heisman was going to keep you on as press secretary, right?
Yes, she did tell me that that was a possibility.
You put a lot on the line for that job, didn't you?
I had previously quit my job to join the Heisman campaign. That's correct.
Right, you gave up a partnership track at your old law firm.
That's correct.
You took a 90% pay cut to work for Mayor Heisman.
Yes, ma'am, that's true.
And a couple days after the campaign, she came and told you you weren't going to be kept on. Isn't that right?
Yes, ma'am, that's correct.
When Mayor Heisman came into your office, you got a little angry at her, don't you? Wouldn't you say?
Well, in the moment, I sure was upset she'd broken her promise. I regret to say I even used some words I'm not proud of.
Right, you started yelling at her, didn't you?
Yes, I did raise my voice.
You said to her, "This is absurd," didn't you?
Yes, ma'am.
You said, "I gave up a year of my life and a partnership track to join your campaign." Didn't you say that?
That's correct. And I even told her I felt like she'd stab me in the
Right,
back.
you said, "How could you have stabbed me in the back, Mayor Heisman?"
Yes, ma'am, I did say that.
And like you said a few moments ago, you also said some things we probably shouldn't say in this courtroom, didn't you?
A few curse words, that's true.
And then you left her office.
Yes, ma'am, I packed up my belongings and went
Right.
home.
A couple weeks go by, you're looking for work, right?
I'm sorry?
A couple weeks go by, you're trying to get a new job.
Yes, it's been a few weeks since that happened.
Right, you've been sending out your resume,
I have, doing interviews too.
doing interviews, meeting with potential employers.
That's correct.
The other thing is, Ms. Seeger, you haven't really hit on that much luck, have you?
No, ma'am, it's been about 3 weeks, so I'm still working on finding a firm.
Well, you tried to see if you could get back to your old law firm, didn't you?
That's correct, and my boss said that since I didn't have clients of my own, Boost Mail and Burnett's would move on.
Right, and you suspect Mayor Heisman may have had something to do with that?
Oh, that's certainly a possibility.
Right. Ms. Ziegler, a couple weeks of your job hunt go by, you get a phone call from the Midlands Election Commission. Remember that?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
They
They
call-
approached me.
They called you in as part of their investigation into election fraud.
Well, when they called me, they didn't tell me what the investigation was.
Well, they called you in your capacity as the mayor's former communication director, right?
That's correct, and they asked me about my time at the campaign.
Right. They asked you a couple questions. Remember that?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And they showed you a picture. Let the record reflect that I'm showing witness a copy of Plaintiff's 3. Do you remember them showing you this picture?
Yes, they showed me that picture after I'd written my affidavit.
They showed you this picture, and you told them a story in secret. Remember that?
They showed me the picture after I'd finished my affidavit, and I confirmed that that was the man inside the campaign headquarters. That's correct.
Ms. Seeger, you actually talked about this statement in your affidavit, your testimony that you did.
No, ma'am, I did. I did include that.
Right. So in your affidavit, you talked about speaking to the Midlands Election Commission. Isn't that true?
That's correct.
So this story that you told them, I want to just rehash it a little bit. It took place at midnight, right?
From 11:30 on.
Right, from 11:30 to midnight and after. Remember that?
Yes, that was the time when the meeting took place.
The story that you told, it involved this secret man who came into the office, right?
It was a man I'd never recognized before. That's true.
And you never recognized before. He and Tom Lyon were kind of looking around suspiciously. Do you remember that?
Yes, ma'am. They were peeking around.
The story that you told, the next thing that happened, they went into the campaign office.
Yes, into the conference room.
And the story that you told after that was holding a manila envelope, a thick envelope.
No, it wasn't manila. It was one of those smaller ones.
Okay, he was holding an envelope, right?
That's correct.
You're also saying he was wearing like a dark hoodie. Do you remember saying that?
He was wearing a sweatshirt and jeans.
Miss Ziegler, you never told anyone this story prior to your speaking to the Midlands Election Commission, did you?
That's correct. When they approached me and asked me to tell them about what had happened.
Right, and this incident that you described took place on February 28th,
Yes, ma'am. That's correct.
and your meeting with the Midlands Election Commission took place on March 29th.
Yes, ma'am.
So for a whole month, you never told any of your colleagues this story.
Well, I wasn't sure what had been going on in that meeting.
Is that a yes or a no, Miss Ziegler?
I'm sorry?
You never told any of your colleagues this story.
That's true. Before the suit came forward.
You never you never reported this story to the authorities, right?
During that month, no, ma'am.
First time you told anyone this story, again, was on March 29th.
Yes, that's when I realized what their meeting had been about.
Right, that was after the election,
Yes, ma'am.
after you were fired.
After I wasn't hired on, that's correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
Redirector,
Yes, please.
the council just asked you some questions about that late night meeting that you witnessed.
Yes, sir.
Ma'am, when that man was walking out, did you ask the mayor who he was?
Well, yes, sir, I tried to.
What do you mean you tried to?
Well, when I asked her about it, when I said, who is he? She just said that he was a man from the Midlands Gazette. But I knew she was lying because there's no such thing as the Midlands Gazette.
Did you ever ask her again who that man had been?
Well, yes, I said, who was he? What was he there for?
What did she say?
She said it was none of my business and that I should stop asking questions.
Thank you, Ms. Eva. No further questions, Your Honor.
Recross, Ms. Khan?
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Thank you, ma'am. You're excused. You may step down.
Thank you.
Thank you. Call your next witness, please.
Yes, Your Honor. The plaintiff calls Gregory Garcia to the stand.
Okay, where's Mr. Garcia?
Right here, Your Honor.
Okay, come on up.
And before I begin, Your Honor, do I have permission to set up the courtroom for use of the demonstrative aid?
Has the other side seen the demonstrative?
They have, Your Honor.
Any objection, counsel?
No, Your Honor.
All right, you may. While he's doing that, do solemnly swear that the testimony about to give you the whole truth, but nothing but the truth, so help you guys?
I do, sir.
Thank you.
Your Honor, I would,
You can tell I usually don't do that, somebody else does. Have a seat.
Your Honor, I would like to ask permission right now to move to see the demonstrative when it's being used.
Yeah, and actually, put it in, the witness has to see it, the jury has to see it, and opposing counsel, if they can't see it, they can move wherever they want to be comfortable, all right? Sir, please state your full name and spell your last name.
My name is Gregory Garcia. Last name is spelled Garcia.
Counsel.
Could you please introduce yourself to the members of the jury?
Good evening. My name is Gregory Garcia.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a senior computer analyst for a forensic analysis firm called Sherlock. I think we're much better than our competitor, Watson.
How did you enter that line of work, Mr. Garcia?
You know, always growing up, I always wanted to be a detective. Solve mysteries, catch the bad guys. My father, he was set in his ways. He'd always tell me, son, my children can only be two things, engineers or disappointment.